Each year, hundreds of thousands of people cross the Mexico-US border illegally. Many, like Pablo, who didn't want to be identified or shown on screen, pay a smuggler to help them cross. He says he fled his home in Guatemala because of corruption and gang violence. For the last 9 years, he's worked in restaurants in New York City. But the increased ICE raids have made him desperate.
I just go to work and go home. I try not to spend too much time outside. It scares me. I don't do anything outside my house. I go to work, go to the grocery store, and pay for my purchases. Yes, I am afraid of doing anything more than that.
The Restaurant Opportunities Centre advocates for employers and workers and makes sure they know their rights should an ICE raid happen. It estimates 70% of restaurant workers in New York are immigrants, and around 1 in 7 are undocumented.
The restaurant industry relies heavily on immigrant labor. That is why it is more vulnerable than any other industries. But in reality, if we don't have the immigrant workers, the workforce will fold. The restaurant industry is not going to be sustainable, and eventually it will affect our economy.
Data from the Pew Research Center in 2017 found the US restaurant industry employs 1.3 million undocumented workers. 15% of all the cooks and 17% of all the dishwashers aren't authorized to work. The raids and subsequent threat of deportation put undocumented workers in a precarious situation. With no papers, they have no employee benefits. They need to work to get paid. But if they go to work, they fear there's a higher risk of getting caught and then deported. The Restaurant Opportunities Centre says the problem could get worse if the Trump administration steps up raids.
We will see more restaurant workers who will quit their jobs or stop coming into their workplace if ICE raids continue. And eventually, the victim here is really the economy.
Pablo says he's still going to work because he needs the money. But he does so with the knowledge that a run-in with immigration officials could mean deportation to a country he hasn't seen for almost a decade. Nick Harper, TRT World, New York.
And Nick joins us from New York. Hi, Nick. Now, tell us more about how undocumented workers are contributing to the economy, especially in places where you are, New York.
Well, to a huge extent. I mean, many within the restaurant world feel that restaurants wouldn't be able to continue to operate if it wasn't for immigrant labour, and a large number of those people within those sectors are undocumented. So there's about 14 million people working in the leisure and hospitality or the restaurant sector here in the United States. About 1.3 of them are undocumented. That comes in at about 8 to 9%. But here in New York and in many other big cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, places that are hubs for immigrants, the figure is much higher. The thinking is that it's somewhere nearer about 15%, or 1 in 7 of the immigrants who work in those restaurants are themselves undocumented. So there is that feeling that if all of those immigrants were to go away, the restaurant industry would severely struggle. And there are those other knock-on effects for other leisure and entertainment industries, places like hotels that also employ a large number of immigrant workers, many of them also undocumented there.
Yes, now, in justifying these raids, the Trump administration says that these workers are in America illegally and that the businesses that employ them are doing so illegally as well. Is there an alternative for these businesses? Are they able to legally hire workers and maintain their firms?
Well, I think the bottom line, and the thing that perhaps isn't spoken about that much, is the fact that there are these jobs that they could offer to other people, but many American citizens simply don't want these jobs. So the meat processing plants that were raided in Mississippi, those are not the type of jobs that American citizens feel that they should be doing. They're happy not to apply for those jobs, and therefore it often falls to immigrant workers, perhaps people who don't have as many qualifications or who are looking for any type of work they can, because because those jobs are often not that well represented, they're not that well respected, they're also not that well paid. People who are washing dishes in restaurants. So there is another way of being able to do it, that legal way, that ability to try and get more actual US citizens to take on those jobs. But it's simply that the citizens themselves often don't want those positions. They'll be looking for other better paid jobs. And it is unclear at this stage exactly what would happen to the companies that are caught. These companies in Mississippi that were caught up in these raids, it seems as if the people who were picked up, the undocumented workers, they are being prosecuted. But it's not clear if the companies themselves would also face prosecution, the thinking being that they're targeting the workers rather than the companies themselves.
Interesting. And we're now seeing some communities attempt to create so-called safe haven, safe zones to protect these undocumented migrants. Is that working?
That's right, yeah, these sanctuary cities spread right across the United States. Some states have even said that they themselves consider themselves to be immigrant friendly. The idea of a sanctuary city, it's not actually something that's written into law. It's up to local officials to decide to go that route. So it doesn't give complete protection to immigrants and to undocumented workers, but it does give them a little bit of help. For example, police would still be able to come in and arrest them. That's federal officials, those ICE raid workers would be able to come in and arrest them and prosecute them. But for example, police here in places like New York, which is a sanctuary city, and also government employers wouldn't be able to ask the legal status of someone who is looking for employment. So it does give them some help, it gives them some benefit. Donald Trump has railed against the idea of sanctuary cities. He's even taken it through the courts, initially suggesting that he would withhold federal funding from those cities that designated themselves as such. That was deemed unconstitutional, and there is very much that fight between some local governments and federal governments about what to do with that undocumented workers in these cities.
Okay, Nick Harper, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for your time.